riding buddies. This week we're going to be looking at the Yamaha YZ465. It had a very limited production life, but it was a very iconic and well manufactured bike for that time. So we'll go sit back, we'll have a look and go through what the YZ465 was all about.
So what we will actually be looking at here is the 1981 YZ465H. This was the second model of the 465 generation. There was only two years, the G and the H. The 465 is still regarded as one of the most successful big bore Yamahas ever produced. Even today, you go out to the vintage motocrosses and the 465 is everywhere as far as the big bore categories are concerned. They're very popular, and rightly so. They were an absolutely awesome bike with some great results back in that early 80s era. The 465 engine started its dominance in 1980 with the G model. In the H model, they mellowed the engine out a little bit, made it a little bit more user-friendly, as the G engine was a bit of a light switch. But this engine came from years of development from a 360, a 400, and then up to the 465. The early engines in the 360s were a very short stroke engine. When they went to the 400, they lengthened the stroke. The 465 was a continuation of that, which gave it a beautiful, smooth power curve. The front suspension on the big 465 was second to none. Although on the 1980 G model, people did complain about flex in the 40mm front forks. So for the H model, they increased the diameter of the forks to a whopping, for the day, 43mm. This made the forks so much more precise. The front forks didn't flex as much under braking, and it made the front end a lot better. The 465 was the last of the generation of Yamahas to use the cantilever rear suspension. It still did work very well against the linkage rear suspension of some of the other bikes, but it was coming to the end of its lifetime. In the J model, when they went to the 490, Yamaha opting to go to the linkage rear end to follow everybody else. Of course, this rear suspension system had a huge amount of development over its whole generation. Of course, at the very end, on the 465s, they had the aluminium swing arm. In 1980, when the 465G first came out, Yamaha introduced us all to the folding gear lever. Of course, this seems very minuscule these days, but a folding gear lever tip back in the day was very important. Everything else had solid gear levers. Also too, simple things like 90-degree pull cables on your throttle control. Everything else back those days all had the throttle cables looping way out in the front of the handlebars and coming back under the bike to get ready to get snagged on everything that went past. In 1980, on the YZ465G, Yamaha introduced the motocross world to double leading shoes. These were the greatest brakes on any motocross bike. Even the early disc brakes were no competition for the double leading shoes. The 465 had a very illustrious racing career as well. It actually did have a lot of success all around the world. Probably the most notable success of the YZ465 was Marty Moats at the 1980 US GP on his privateered YZ465G, taking on the world of works bikes and coming out on top to win the weekend. 1981 saw KTM introduce the 495. Mako introduced their iconic 490. This sounded the alarm bells for Yamaha with the 465. So by 1982, Yamaha took their 465 and took it to a 490. This was the end of the 465 era. So it's time now for the guy that wasn't born. He actually appeared at a motocross track somewhere in Australia in a cloud of two-stroke smoke. Ding. as usual, seeing as how Ding does not speak English, I will do the interpretation after each question for you. What are the twin leading shoe brakes like to ride with, Ding? Amazingly powerful for the era, so pulls up the big bike quite easily. What's the engine like to ride with? I think you can all interpret that one yourselves. What's it actually handle like? You can certainly feel that it's a big bike underneath you, but for its time, it handled very nice. So what's your impressions overall? It's the whole package. It's no wonder these things won so much back in their day. So that's just a brief overview of the YZ465. In particular, thank you to Brett Davidson for lending us his YZ465H and allowing Ding to do a couple of laps on it. These bikes were so impressive and Ding really loved it. So thank you, Brett. Also too, you can check out his little CR125, which you've also done a story on as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and keep up to date with what we're doing. Thank you so much.